All right, hello everyone. This is going to be my first almost dual version video. So I'm making this video for 1.8 as well as 1.18 because this concept is applicable to both. Um, it's a little bit more iffy in 1.8 purely because you don't have target blocks and you don't have observers and that sort of stuff. But it is definitely doable and I've managed to sort of lay out the fundamentals of it. But what I thought I'd do here is I would get a full video and explanation going on how you can use this in your cannons and how you can essentially implement it properly. So the concept that I have here is called pulse width modulation. Basically, what it is a central toggle system that toggles the functions of the cannon by varying a pulse width instead of using like lever toggles and that sort of stuff. So this allows you to essentially build cannons quicker, and it allows you to change multiple toggles at the same time. So instead of you changing a toggle and needing to change multiple toggles to change the mode, instead of that, you simply change modes. So you can jump from OSRB AP nuke straight into like AP backstack or OSRB backstack with like one or two clicks on a repeater, or in this case here, you could probably do it with one lever as well. So there's a few different parts that I want to talk about in this video. First of all, I'll talk about the clocks. So this one here is I guess the current standard clock for 1.18. This example here, it looks like a 1.2 second clock, but just because of the quick pulse here, it is a 1 second clock. I'm using this on my current cannon. I'll just start it up so you can see. So you'll see that there's a single tick that flows through these repeaters. So it uses a 1 tick pulse. So all the filters and everything in PWM, I'm using pulse lengths of 1, 2, 3, or 4. In this case here, it's very, very nice because of course your repeater has like 1, 2, 3, or 4 redstone ticks, but it's also a little bit iffy if your cannons start going a bit longer. Um, it might be easier to wire with longer pulse lengths in some circumstances, but for all the toggles that are set up here, this is all for using pulse lengths of 1, 2, 3, or 4 redstone ticks. So in this case here, this is the standard 1.18 clock. All you need to do to change the pulse length is just right click this repeater, and that will change the pulse length between 1, 2, 3, and 4. It's a little bit dodgy because you're changing a repeater in a live firing schematic. Jesus, what was that voice crack? But anyway, yeah, it's dodgy as hell, but it still works. I haven't seen anyone blow up a cannon yet by changing the wrong repeater. It's bound to happen. And I'm sure there's going to be some better alternative setups that will allow you to change your repeater safely when you have a complete noob in the cannon. But in this case here, I'm quite comfortable with this setup. So that you cycle it between 1, 2, 3, and 4, and you can do it while the cannon is firing. As far as I know, you can't blow a cannon by spam cycling this repeater. The main thing you need to note when building the clocks like this, the rising edge must remain constant. So what I mean by that is when the initial pulse goes through the cannon, the redstone must always basically be activated at the exact same time. So for example, if I take this 1.8 clock here, this clock here, you cannot change this repeater here because it's changing the rising edge. It activates later now. You do not want that. What you want to be doing is activating at the exact same time every time, and then adding more or less ticks on after the rising edge. So the 1.8 clock is a little bit different. Of course, you can do this in 1.18 as well. This is using lever toggles instead. It's a little bit more finicky to do, but it's fine. So say if I right click that lever there, you'll see now it's doing a pulse length of 4. And then this is a pulse length of 1, 2, obviously, 3, and then 4. So all you need to do is flick the repeater for the corresponding pulse length, and it will always default to 1 when nothing is on. So that's the 1.8 one. This is the 1.18 one. So now you have a varying pulse length that is basically being sent around your cannon. So Do I talk about wall wiring yet? No. Okay. So the important thing here, this pulse length, um, it must basically remain untouched until you send it into a filter. So what I mean by that is you cannot put longer repeaters in this chain. Um, so say if you put two here, that's going to extend it to two redstone ticks. You can't do that. This needs to be done with one redstone tick. However, after you use a filter, then you can have whatever amount of timing. Basically, the signal that you send out from the clock is very, very timing sensitive, and you need to be very, very careful not to shorten or extend the pulse when you're dealing with this signal. So you could extend this like normally with like redstone dust. Um, for 1.8 especially, you can of course use your classic terrible staircase wiring. It's been so long, I can barely remember how to do that. This is all fine with PWM because you are not changing the fundamental timings of that pulse. The second you add a longer repeater, then you're changing the fundamental timings of the pulse. So you can't do that. However, after a toggle, you can do longer repeaters. So as yeah, I'm trying to hammer this point home because I know people have screwed up with this and don't know like precisely what's going on. You cannot use a longer repeater before a filter unless you really know what you're doing. I'm not going to get into why. I'm sure people can figure it out, but for everyone else, do not use longer repeaters before a filter. So now we've got this functional clock here. We can change the timings on the clock. Now we need to work out a way to decode it. So in this case here, in my Discord, I've got screenshots of all of these, but I'm on Can Butter's plot at the moment. There's a bunch of different sorts of filters here. So he's got them sorted by like what they allow through. So in this case here, this repeater will, or yeah, this setup here will allow 2, 3, 4. Now for each of these setups, you just ignore the first 3 blocks, you ignore that note block, you ignore the observer, you ignore that repeater. All you need to worry about is the thing after this first repeater. So in this case here, a 2, 3, 4 filter is a comparator. I'll show you how that works over here. We go back to a pulse length here, and then we put some redstone in. See how that repeater doesn't fire there? But the second you extend the pulse length to say 2, now not the repeater, the comparator fires. And of course you can do that like basically anywhere. You can put these filters in anywhere off the raw signal. Thank you, Jax, that's great. And see it fires there. And as long as you don't change that fundamental timing, it won't fire again. So that's a repeater, for example. Let's have a look at, what's this, 2, 3. So a comparator going into a 4-1 piston locking thing. Okay, cool. I can probably just do that off this. So if we go into here, then we do our repeater there. So now this is a, what was that, 2, 3 filter? Yeah, 2, 3. So this will only activate on pulse lengths of 2 and 3. So we currently have this on 1. Dude, really? Okay. So you can see it lets through this pulse length of 2, and we're actually running into the issue where the clock can sometimes be a bit iffy. So what I'll do is I'm just going to extend this clock to that. Okay. Now this is working fine. So some of the filters are a bit timing sensitive, so you can't run ridiculously fast cannon speeds into some of these, but they all work up to 1 sec, and I know 1.8 servers are basically 2 or 3 sec. Anyway, that repeater there, that's a 2, 3 filter. So it'll work on 2, which it's currently doing. It will work on 3, which it's still doing. And now it should not power on 4. And you can see that repeater there locks up. Okay, let's do one more filter. Let's find another one. Not using a target block because I want this to be 1.8 friendly as well. 3, 4 is a bit boring. Let's find one for 2. 1, 2. So this 1, 2 filter. So what I'll do is I'll run this out here, sort of just showing how you can extend it. Even better, I'll just do it off the top here. So this was 1, 1, 2, 3. Should be it. This should be the 1, 2 filter. Oops, got the wrong way around. Okay. That is not 1, 2. Where is the 1, 2 filter? 2, 3, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Okay. Am I thick? Someone's put it on the wrong circuit. Nice. That's fine. Okay, let's show you this filter. So in this case here, we've got it, a repeater set to 2 redstone ticks. You change it to 3 redstone ticks. You can see it now locks up. And the same case will be for 4 redstone ticks as well. Pretty easy. You set it back to 1. Let's at 3. Okay, cool. So this is sort of the fundamentals of it. So you get a timer, you can set that time to anywhere, and you can automatically toggle stuff based on the pulse length. All right, now let's talk about actually making a cannon with this. So like I said, I've made a couple of cannons with this. 1.8 should actually be a little bit easier because you can, like, glass wiring is the only wiring you can do. There's no real vertical wiring in 1.8, except for the glass wiring, like weird cases like the slime block wiring as well. However, for 1.18, it's a bit harder. So what I'll do is I'll start with 1.8 and I'll talk you through what you can essentially do with this sort of stuff. So let's do, okay. So I'm sort of just thinking at this point, what do I actually want? Okay, so let's say, for example, you have a 2-second push nuke. Yeah, okay. So what we want is a plot chat. So we want a 2S push nuke with dry backstack and OSRB. I don't know why you'd want that. This is just an example. This is fine. So let's grab this clock here. This is the 1.8 around the clock. I'm just going to clear some stuff out of the way. All right. So let's start with, say, the powers. Or actually, let's do a map of the timings. So obviously we got a push nuke. We don't really want our nuke and nuke hammer going off when we're OSRB because you can't really push nuke with an OSRB as far as I'm aware. So we do not want our push nuke to be interfering with our OSRB. So what I might do here is I'm going to say 1 is going to be backstack, 2 is going to be OSRB. We could potentially use a nuke with this actually. OSRB plus nuke. Actually, no. So backstack, and then we're going to do AP nuke, and then we're going to do OSRB AP nuke, and then 4, we're going to do push nuke. So this is sort of assuming that you have like your nuke on the same timings, but okay. This is going to be a little bit complex, and hopefully I can sort of nail home what I'm going to try and do here. So obviously for your backstack, you just want your powers going, your boosters, everything like that. So anything off backstack, you just want to wire straight off repeaters like this. So this is going to be stuff like your 1 rev, your powers, whatever. Just like a 1, 2, 3, or 4 redstone tick repeater, it's always going to activate. So this is going to be powers, boosters, comp, 1 rev, whatever else. Okay. So at this point here, we've got a nuke on 2, 3, and 4. We're going to assume for this case here that the fundamental timings are exactly the same. If they're different, then it might get a little bit more finicky. but in this case here, we're going to say that they're all the same timing. So on 2, 3, and 4, you can see we have a nuke going off. So on 2, 3, 4, nuke. On 2 and 3, we're going to have AP. On 3, we're going to have OSRB. And on 4, because it's a push nuke, you're going to need your extra scatters, like your push power and everything else. So we'll just say for push nuke stuff. Cool, it doesn't fit. Whatever. Let's make this nice and bright. Okay, so now we know what we want on each pulse length. We know what we need on each pulse length, and now we know what filters we need as well. So let's start with the top one, nuke. So everything you want going to the nuke, again, this can be extended out to wherever, and after the filter, it doesn't really matter. So what I'll do is I'll put this comparator here, because I know this is my 2, 3, 4, and now this is going to be my nuke. Nuke. Cool. So that's our nuke there. On 2 and 3, we want an AP. So again, we go over here and we have a bit of a look around. 3, 2, 3. So a comparator, and then the 4-tick and 1-tick repeater locking. Now, another thing you can do with PWM wiring is you can use, like you can sort of stack filters on top of each other. So what I mean by that is you can reuse parts of filters for other filters. I wouldn't recommend doing this initially, but I'll just show you what I mean quickly. So we already have this comparator here as a 2, 3, 4 filter. We can essentially just rerun that comparator into this one here, and this will also do our AP. So this will be 2, 3, and that's going to be our AP. And what I'll do is I'll just very, very quickly test it, just to show you what I mean. So starting on 1 redstone tick. So we got our powers boosters, 1 rev, whatever's connected to this repeater here will go off first. Now, what we're looking for on our second shot is our AP as well as our nuke. So when I turn this back on to 2, you can see our AP and our nuke both go off. Now on 2 and 3, or on 3 as well, we should also see our AP still work. So if we go AP. Of course, it's not going to function as AP with OSRB on. It's going to function more like just a filter bypass, but still it's nice to have. So 2, 3, you can see our AP and our nuke are both going off. Now 4 is our push nuke. You could probably have AP on with a push nuke actually, to be fair, but in this case we'll just turn it off. It's fine. If you want to push nuke a drywall, for example, hey, might happen. And you can see now our AP does not go off on 4. Perfect. So we've got a few more filters left. So our next filter that we're going to worry about is going to be our OSRB. So again, we'll have a look through here. We'll find 3. Oh, that's messy. That's messy. It's messy, but it's better. Again, all these filters, there's screenshots in my Discord, which will be linked. I didn't save them as schematics because they're just too small to be schematics, to be honest. But anyway, so this was the redstone torch comparator setup. Redstone torch. Okay, and then I think it was this guy. Pretty sure. Okay, so I got a pulse length of 4 going in, and what we can do is we can just go back through, test a pulse length of 1. That's not getting through. A pulse length of 2. Okay, it's being naughty. Where is it? 3, 3, 3. Have I done something wrong? Doesn't look like it. Okay. Cheeky cunt. Okay. Needs to be in subtract mode. I think. That's subtract? I can't remember. Anyway, I think that's subtract. Yeah, it must be. Okay, so copy it exactly how it is, or you're going to run into issues like this. Anyway, going on. So we've just tested 2 redstone ticks there. We'll test 3 redstone ticks now. You can see that lets our OSRB through. So OSRB is now on. And we go to 4 ticks here. And now it's off. Cool. Last one we need is going to be our push nuke stuff. So that's going to be our third power, our push TNT, our scatters, everything like that. So what we'll do is we'll look for 4. We'll find one that we like. Jesus. There we go, this one. Again, you can pick like any of those for essentially what you're trying to do with the cannon. And now what we'll do is we'll go bang, 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 bang. So that power's going off there. That's our nuke. So our nuke and our push stuff. So this is going to be on 4. This is our 4 push stuff. Third power, scatters, push, like I said. All right. And then that's working on 4. So we should see that turn off on 3, which it does. Should not work on 2. Doesn't work on 2. And doesn't work on 1. All right. So that's sort of, I guess, like a little showcase. A quick word on it. One thing that you really want to make sure you do is you need to have everything like clustered in groups. You don't want any gaps between, like you don't want AP nuke on 1 and then backstack on 2 and then nuke on 3. It is ridiculously hard to do filters that have a gap in the middle, like that activate for 1 and 3 but not 2. So try and have everything as clustered as possible. So I think at this point here, this is pretty much all the 1.8 stuff talked about. The next sort of stuff's going to be a bit more specific for 1.18. I'll show you the cannon that I've just finished to sort of show you how I've implemented it. But 1.8 players are more than welcome to stay as well to see how I've implemented it. All right. So at this point here, we've done a little showcase of how to actually work out what we need going off when and how to implement these filters. So what I'll do now is I'm going to go to home, new cannon. So this is a 1.18 1sec that I made for Complex that's running off PWM, the most modern one. I'm not gonna fire it, but I will because I did the showcase for this cannon anyway, and I still don't have Fulbright, so night vision it is. Anyway, so 1.18 players. This is the configuration that I'm currently using for Complex, which gives us AP backstack, AP nuke, OSRB, and OSRB backstack. So we've got AP backstack, of course, for the bucket spams. That's very, very powerful for those because the second you hit a dry spot, it just clears everything out. AP nuke specifically for patches. And that means instead of it like OSRB being pushing water where you need an AP, that's actually using the AP as an AP. And it will clear out patches when your nuke goes off. AP nuke OSRB, which is a fairly standard, like just water pushing ratio, and then OSRB backstack, which will dry backstack. So that's the configuration that I have here. Obviously, I need filters for AP, which I have going on 1, 2, 3. I need nuke, which is 2, 3, OSRB 3, 4. And what's not mentioned here is your reswing, obviously. And I forgot to talk about that with the other setup as well. OSRB, AP nuke. Oh no, OSRB. So you just include your OSRB with your reswing. Okay, have fun. Cool. This one, so the actual sort of configuration I have for this one is AP is on 1, 2, 3, and then I have nuke on 2, 3, OSRB on 3, 4, and then reswing on 3. And this is actually going to lead nicely into another point that I wanted to talk about. Excuse me. Glow ink sac. Okay, so for 1.18, obviously wall wiring is very, very good for this version because it allows you to basically run feeds off everything off that central wall there. In this case here, because you cannot differentiate between one or two redstone ticks on the wall wiring, it actually made it a little bit more interesting to implement this sort of PWM stuff. And it took me a little bit to work out what exactly you need to do with it. In this case here, we're using a 2 redstone tick pulse extender. So we actually increase the signal. So we start with 1, 2, 3, and 4 here. We increase it to 3, 4, 5, 6 here. And then where we need to do um, our filters, we actually decrease the signal length back down to 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then implement our filters back in again. So that's what this little circuit does here. So that's a toggle flip-flop that extends when it first detects like the wall change, and then it retracts after, and that will get our raw pulse length of 3, 4, 5, 6. And then this little setup here will reduce that down to 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, down at the very, very bottom here, again, you might be able to see some of the filters that I've used before. This one here is a little bit new, but that is this is a 3-4 filter for the OSRB. So like I said, up here, we've got our OSRB on 3-4. So that's our 3-4 filter for our OSRB. And then game ticks it because it's just a 0 to 6, 6.5 with 33 for the OSRB ratio. And then that's our OSRB there. Okay, then on this side here, this is 1, 2, 3. This is for our AP. That set of repeaters there is for our slab bus there. But anyway, the AP basically runs through that, and then it activates this set of dispensers here, and the slab bus goes off like 6 redstone ticks after it. So it's just timed out so that they can reuse that same set of dispensers with this wiring. Anyway, besides the point, that's our 1, 2, 3 filter here for AP. On top here is 2, 3 for our nuke. So that comparator is the 2, 3, 4, and then this is like a 1, 2, 3 filter. You combine those two together and you get 2, 3. So that's our nuke there. Obviously, just reuses the OSRB hammer as the nuke hammer, and then it pulses this set of dispensers here for the nuke. All right, and the final one is obviously our filter for 3 here. Those who have actually, to be honest, okay, so to nuke with this has always been the case. To nuke with OSRB, you always need that reswing. On cannons of old, I'm pretty sure everyone needed to use an AND gate for their toggles. So if you have OSRB on and nuke on, you then put that through an AND gate, and then that basically only puts your reswing on when those two are on. Exactly the same case here. You can do an AND gate between your nuke and your OSRB, and that means that if it pulses on 2 or 4, only one side of that AND gate will be active, and then when it pulses on 3, both sides will be active. I've done something very, very similar here, except I've done it a little bit more gross, and I've ANDed the AP and the OSRB, I think. Yeah, that's what I've done. So I've just unfilled the cannon, and I'll leave it just to show you this AND gate working. So we're currently on 2. So 2 is AP nuke. So I'll show you one side of this AND gate first. So this is 2 here. Well, this is from our AP. So I've got this timed out basically, so it rises right before the circuit for the OSRB hits it. So the slab bus won't trigger the reswing, only the AP will. But anyway, so you can see that piston there is raising up and down, but there's no signal going through it. And then exactly the same, or well, it'll be a bit different, but you'll see the other side when I switch it to 4 redstone ticks there. You can see now our OSRB is firing, but our reswing is not firing. And you can see actually there the difference between the slab bust pulsing this piston and the OSRB pulsing this piston. So the piston's pulsing, but it's not going off at the right time. So now when I switch this back over to 3 redstone ticks, Really? You're gonna break on me now. Okay, dude. Are you serious? Taking the piss. Sorry. Okay, whatever. If this breaks now, I'll be so angry. Piss off. I had this set up correctly. I could promise you that. Oh, I'll just disable the slide bus temporarily, and then I'll switch it to one. But anyway, my shit canning abilities aside, this is still the functioning AP, or it's meant to be, or the functioning reswing. You can see how it's implemented at least. I can promise you it works on the actual cannon because I've tested it on conflicts. But that being that being said, the other thing that I want to talk about very, very quickly, and just before I end this video, is the other thing that you need to do with this wall wiring, which is using your rising edge for your basically main parts of the cannon. So you obviously want to have it activate at the same time. Um, and because it's actually double pulsing the wall to get that longer pulse length, you can't just run a repeater straight off this wall, or otherwise you're going to get issues where it's going to double pulse your boosters and stuff. So I'm just using some simple rising edge detection here, down here, and then there's like one at the bottom here. So this will only pulse on the first, it'll only pulse on the first signal that it receives and not the second one. It's not technically rising edge, it's, I don't know, a flip-flop, I guess. But, no, it's not even a flip-flop. I don't know what the word for it is. It's escaping my mind right now. But anyway, you can see how that's going to be implemented, because you always want your cannon going off at the same timing. So on these fundamental timings, I just use these little setups here. Anyway, all right, video done. Yeah, it's a bit to wrap your head around. It'll take a little bit to implement, especially for 1.8 players as well. But I promise you, it's a really cool concept. And when it's fully working and it's not wired like an absolute chimpanzee, it's very, very, it's very, very good and fun to optimize. It's not fun to optimize. It's terrible to optimize this, but it's still cool. So yeah, hopefully you enjoyed, and I'll catch you later.